everybody. Thanks for stopping by. Today we have a very special person here from Boston, Massachusetts, professor at Berklee School of Music, great player, great instructor, and let me give you a little bit of information. His name is Mark Walker. He's originally from Chicago, and like I said, he was a teacher. He is a teacher at Berklee, and we're going to go ahead with the show. He's going to open up, and he's going to be playing. So everybody have a good time, enjoy yourself. Any questions? Hit me up in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. All right, here we go.
to update their flash player.
That's right.
You know?
Update your flash player,
There
kids.
you go. That was real nice, Mr. Moore.
Thank you.
There is no questions. Our buddy Jack Lima from Brazil is in the room.
Hey, Jack. Nice to see you.
He's coming right back.
Yeah.
All right. He just has to chat. That's okay.
Okay.
Anyway, any questions? Anything you guys want to hear? Mark has his agenda all set.
I take requests. What would you like to hear? So I just want to thank a few people before we get into the discussion and the lesson. I want to thank Paiste Cymbals, Remo Drumheads, Vic Firth Sticks, Yamaha Drums, and LP Percussion, and of course Matt Patella, and my man Roy, who brought the kit.
All right, Roy.
And you know, this is a very basic kit I'm playing here, and sometimes I expand it with more toms, more bells, more this and more that. But I think any drummer should be able to play the bare minimum, like one cymbal, one tom-tom maybe, snare, bass drum, hi-hat if you need it. If you can make music on that, you know, you're in good shape. There used to be a guy around town, Leon Parker, who would just bring a cymbal to gigs and make it sound really good. So I just want to get into you know, a few fundamental things today. Not too much advanced stuff, but something you can use, hopefully. One thing when I sit down to a new kit, I usually try to get the seat height the way I like it first, and then operate from there. Then I can make the drums come to me. I think that's really important, to make the drums come to you rather than to hunch over and try to make yourself come to the drums, because you can hurt your back and many other things that way. As far as tuning, what I do is usually start with the snare drum, get it to where I like it, and then tune the toms with the bottom heads first. I get a medium tension, and then I tune the top head and try to see the relationship between the two heads. And then the relationship with all the drums. I think that's very important, because if you have one tom that's way up high and then another tom that's completely low, there might be a little bit missing in there. So you kind of have to adjust with each drum set you play. I was lucky because I got this nice set of Yamaha drums here for this lesson, and so you just have to set it up so that it's easily reachable. Somebody said if you reach your hand out to shake somebody's hand and you put in a stick in your hand, that's where your cymbal should be. Okay? I don't always play a 4-piece kit. Sometimes I have toms here, so the cymbal may move over, but it's usually within reach. So if you have to reach out like that, it's going to be a little bit too far. Now, if you know what Matt teaches, it's all about stick control, and it's all about relaxation, because if you're not relaxed, it's not going to happen. So I try to remember as much as I can to stay relaxed when I play. Sometimes when you get going, the tension builds up, but you just have to do kind of a running scan when you play. So if you're playing solo, there's less things to think about. When you're playing with people, there's a lot more things to think about. If you're playing solo, like I just was, I'm thinking about what I'm playing, what I've already played before, and what I'm going to be playing. Not planning it out too much because it's an improvisation, but you kind of have to know the history of your solo in order to take it in a particular direction. I'm also doing sort of a running scan, like just checking to see if my feet are still on the pedals. Am I still breathing? Things like that. How's my posture? How's the sound? Am I playing too loud? And the answer is yes, I was playing too loud, but it's okay. If you're playing with people, then there's a whole other set of things to think about as a running scan. The way you blend with the band is very important, and the groove that you generate. You know, it could be the simplest groove, it could be a very complicated thing, but it has to generate some kind of a pocket. And When I see a student play, I can tell right away whether that student has a pocket or not. You can pretty much tell right from the first couple of bars. So, we talk about pocket, we talk about groove. What is it? It's the ability to make people dance, basically. Whether they're sitting down, standing up, you got to move people. And I try to take that attitude with everything I play, whether it's a snare drum solo from a rudimental book or something else. I try to keep people in mind because I play for a lot of dancers and I know what it takes to make people move. So when I look out in the audience and see somebody bobbing their head, then I know things are okay. So getting back to that running scan, think about how you're blending with the band. If you can hear everybody in the band, then you're in good shape. If you can't hear somebody, play a little softer so you can hear them. If you have the ability to control the monitor, then just ask for a little more, but try not to blast it too much because then, first of all, it might hurt your ears, and second of all, everything kind of gets to the ceiling really quickly in terms of volume. So blending with the band, grooving, also balancing your own kit with itself is very important. And that's something, one thing I see when I go on a gig sometimes is that the engineer, house engineer, hasn't heard us play a note, but he puts a mic on the hi-hat. So I'm thinking, why would he need a mic on the hi-hat? Why would he really need that? I mean, the hi-hat usually can go in the overhead and it's fine. Okay, if they want to mix it in a little bit, no problem. I'm used to that. But when the engineer cranks it up, and we haven't played yet, I know exactly what happened. There was a drummer in there that played really soft on the hat and beat the hell out of the snare drum, okay? Why drummers do that, I'm not exactly sure. But if you mix yourself, then you give them something to work with. They don't have to do anything. They could just mix you flat and it sounds great, okay? Now, having said that, different kinds of music have a different mix on the drum set. Okay, for example, when I have a student who's accustomed to playing rock, first attempt swing, it's kind of weird because the foot is way too heavy and the cymbals way too quiet, and the accents they play on the snare are way too heavy too. So I try to get them to think of a 4-channel mixer. Okay, you got 4 channels. One is your bass drum, snare drum, cymbal, and hi-hat. So put your cymbal on, let's say 90. Put your snare on maybe 50. Bass drum, if you're going to walk with the bass drum, like play soft quarter notes, feathering, that would be maybe 10 or 5. And then hi-hats right up there with the ride, say 85, 90. Okay, so that gives you an idea of the balance. So if you play an accent on the snare while you're playing ride cymbal, it's not going to be louder. It's going to blend in because the main focus, the focal point of swing is the ride cymbal. But you don't want to have it sound empty, so you got to play something on the low end to add some bottom to that cymbal. Okay? So one thing I have students do is just play quarter notes on the cymbal, add the bass drum really soft, but keep the cymbal strong. And usually they can't do that for a little while, but then after a while they get accustomed to it. Then add the hi-hat nice and strong, so your right hand and left foot are strong, but the bass drum's really soft. Okay? And then you can start to add the pickup notes. All right, so you're probably not hearing that bass drum, but you're feeling it. If you listen, it just adds a little bit of bottom end to that cymbal. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a few improvised accents on the snare. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the main reason I'm demonstrating this is for the balance of the kit. You know, there's tons of coordination methods. As a matter of fact, I have a book called World Jazz Drumming, and in it I do exactly what we just did. And then I have a series of phrases I add on the top of that, on snare, between the snare and bass drum, so you can check it out. But the main thing is that you have to know what the balance is for the different types of music. All right, so that's another consideration. Now, when it comes to actually playing music, playing tunes, you have to know the overall structure of the song. Whether it's a jazz tune, a rock chart, whatever, you really have to know the basic structure, because you can tell right away when a drummer knows it and when a drummer doesn't. I've had students where they came in and just kind of played over the top of it, and it sounded okay, but when we really got into the form and structure and really analyzed it, they would go to their ensemble and come back next week. I'd ask them how it went, and they'd said, oh, everybody was relying on me to lead them in the tune. So that's how it works. If you really know the form you're playing on, it's really going to help you a lot. As a matter of fact, in that opening solo, I was keeping an AABA form. So I just decided I wanted to play on a form instead of just play an open thing. So sometimes when you put yourself in a box, you have to be more creative. So that's why I did that. Also, dynamics. You know, we don't talk about dynamics that much because we're playing. But if you apply dynamics in different parts of the song in a subtle way so that people don't really notice, it really enhances it. As a matter of fact, when you incorporate dynamics into your playing and into the song, it creates a 3D effect in the song. Okay, so if you play the verse a little softer and then the chorus a little louder, but not from piano to fortissimo, I'm talking about subtle differences. Maybe play the second verse a little louder than the first verse and then come up. And then maybe the solo could be louder than the chorus and come back down. You know, so if you scope it out and really think about it, you could really enhance the tune more than if you just played it flat. Sometimes I I have my students play, and they play really loud in a small room. And I say, wait, I'm right here. You know, play a little softer. Try to play the room. And I tell them that it's all about the distance of the stick from the surface you're hitting. That's all it is. Okay? You can play the most intense rock groove like this and get the same sound down here. This is all about show. Okay? So when I used to play weddings back in the 80s, we'd have to play rock tunes, and it was a lot of fun. We'd make people dance, and R&B and soul and all kinds of stuff, but really hard-hitting stuff. But unfortunately, the grandmother of the bride and the bride were sitting at the table right next to my snare drum. So I had to find a way to make it work. So what I did was I played the same groove with the same intensity, just closer to the surface of each voice, okay? So the snare drum, that was a big one. Instead of playing like this, I'm going to play a very loud backbeat. Okay? Instead of playing like that, I just did the same exact sound. Just an inch or two off the snare. So you can see I'm hardly moving my hands at all. I'm like this much from the head. But still, it sounds full, it sounds good, it's got a pocket, and you can dance to it. So try to apply that concept to each physical space that you find yourself playing in, because I think that's going to make a difference. And if all the other musicians are on the same page, then you guys can play with dynamics and really make it more three-dimensional. Unfortunately, a lot of bands are already playing at 11 when they start, and there's nowhere to go from there, really, except to orchestrate it differently, maybe, to go to a China. All right? So try to apply that in your whatever setting you play in, and I think it's going to make a big difference. Like I said, it makes it into 3D. So, Matt, do we have any questions yet?
No, but I do.
Okay.
All right. I'm old, so you got to give me a chance. I'm a senior citizen.
Okay.
Anyway, just some fundamental things. Playing these samba patterns, this samba foot pattern with the ritual,
Mm-hmm.
the Alan Dawson ritual. What's the importance of all of that, and what doors has it opened, and what's your approach? Because we've had a lot of requests for the last 2 weeks about you performing the ritual. I mean, it's going to take a while to perform it. Just give us some insight about 1 or 2 or 3 different things.
Okay, cool. Well, Alan Dawson came up with the ritual. I can't remember what year he did, but I actually saw him perform it in 1978 at a drum symposium in Wisconsin. And I thought, wow, that was really cool. And he was playing with brushes, which is really tough. All the roughs, all the rolls, everything. So he came up with this whole series of rudiments over a samba ostinato on the feet. And I had a student who got an alternate version of that from Marvin Smitty Smith and gave it to me. And I tried it and couldn't do it, and I gave up. And then a couple of years went by, and I whipped that out again and tried it and gave up and did that a couple more times. And then I finally said, all right, that's it. I'm going to learn this if it kills me. And then I learned it. So that's the one I remember, and that's the one I usually practice. But I sometimes work on Dawson's ritual too. They're pretty similar. But what it's done for me, and I've been practicing it flat-footed, heel down. I haven't raised my foot, although I play heel up and heel down both. But what it's done for me is it's enabled me to get more comfortable with heel down playing for the low to medium dynamics. And it's also given me a better sense of spacing, and that leads to a better pocket, a more relaxed pocket. And it's led to better coordination between the hands and feet when I'm playing flat-footed. So the first part of it is just single strokes. I'll demonstrate a little bit of that. Okay. So basically, what I have to do when I do that is not try to play it too fast, and also relax the hands when I do it, because if there's any tension, then it's not going to work. So it's kind of a balancing act. You got to balance the rebound with moving the stick and try to lock it with the feet. Sometimes I loosen up the foot pattern. It almost sounds like instead of, just because it goes with the triplets. Okay? So there's a whole series of rudiments over that. Singles, doubles, flams, roughs. Pretty much every rudiment in the book is in that ritual. And I use it as a warm-up pretty much every day. And I do it with different grips. I alternate between traditional and matched because I play both grips. And so if I work on it with traditional grip, then I might do another technical exercise like the Stone Killer from Joe Morello Master Studies in the other grip. Okay? So the thing I found is that I have to be really careful that I don't push it too hard and go too fast, because I can feel a little overuse, a little bit of injury if I go push too hard. So I've never had any major problems with my hands, knock on wood. So I want to keep it that way. So, you know, the temptation is sometimes if you see something, some people playing very fast, you want to go to the set and play very fast. Just be careful of that, because that could mess you up. I've had people who have been really obsessed with practicing and they've really hurt themselves. So just take it easy. I tell students, treat it like a vacation, like you're just chilling on the beach with a drink while you're playing the exercise. You know, I think that's a good attitude. And also, you know, work with a metronome, but keep it grooving. Whatever exercise you do, really keep it grooving. Really concentrate on the groove of the exercise. Try to make it sound less mechanical and more pocket. Okay? That doesn't mean you have to swing it in a certain way. You could swing it, but just try to keep it feeling good. Now, so like I said, to answer the question, I'm more comfortable playing flat-footed. I feel like my coordination is a little bit better, and the spacing of what I'm playing is a little bit more precise. And that comes from practicing rudiments in general. I mean, I know some people who are not really too big on rudiments, but I always ask them, well, if you know something better, I'm all ears. Not that I'm going to play a flam paradiddle, you know, on my gig, well, my next gig. It may not happen. It may happen. But if you orchestrate rudiments around the kit, you could have a lot of fun. Like, check this out. Okay, what's that? Anybody? It's a 5-stroke roll. I'm just starting it on the single note instead of the double. Okay? So, in the first semester at Berklee, we go over the 26 rudiments. Okay? Optional PAS 40, whatever. But the 26 are required. So you have to memorize and be able to play any of those. So I challenge everyone watching this to memorize all 26 rudiments. And then, in the second semester, we orchestrate them around the kit. So what I didn't really get too serious about the rudiments until I was already playing with Michel Camilo back in 1996, 97, 98. I felt like what I was playing wasn't really totally in the pocket, and I wanted to get it better. And I took a few lessons with Michael Carvin. He said, "Do you know all your rudiments by name?" I said, "Yeah, I think so." He said, "You think so?" And so I went back and I memorized them. And to keep myself from getting bored, I started to orchestrate them around the kit. And I discovered some pretty interesting things. That if you displace them and if you put them in a different context than they normally sound, you can come up with some really interesting things. Like, let's take, well, we just played a 5-stroke roll. How about a 7-stroke roll? Okay, something like that. You know, if you apply it creatively, you can do a lot of different things. Now, some students, when they find out that they're required to play rudiments around their kit, all they do is play it on the top. But I encourage you to use your feet as well. So if there's a diddle, play it on the bass drum, or you know, some kind of roll, you can play it in between, just like I did with the 5-stroke. Let me demonstrate that one more time. So I'm going to just break that down because that's kind of a nice groove and a little bit of a challenge for when you bring the hi-hat in. I'll show you. So here's a 5-stroke roll. Okay, so now we're going to switch it so that the accent is the downbeat. 1, 2, 1 and 2 and. Okay, now we're going to move the right hand to the floor tom just to get used to another sound source. Same thing. 1 and 2 and. So don't forget the accent. That has to be significantly louder than the other strokes. Okay, so now that we've done that, we'll go ahead and substitute the bass drum for the right hand. Okay, so now what I did after that, because it sounds like that accent on the snare is the backbeat, that would be like 2 and 4. So I played 8th notes on the hat. And that's the step that kind of throws people when they first try it. They want to go, but it's. Okay, now are you going to use that groove on a gig? Not necessarily, but it could be a nice variation. So if you're just playing, you could just throw it in. So that's another big issue. You got to make sure that you throw in whatever you throw in very tastefully as a variation once in a while, and don't overuse it, because then it's going to sound like you're practicing on stage. And I don't think anybody in the band is going to like that too much. All right. So basically, the Rudiments kind of opened up a lot of things for me in terms of getting my time a little more in the pocket, and also developing my technique a little bit better. I would say I have a long way to go technically, but you know, that's a good warm-up. I feel like I can move my hands pretty easily, and you know, if you look at the whole point of this, it's really training yourself to play something where you want to play it without being impeded by lack of technique. In other words, make music and have fun and not have to worry about it. You know, any player knows that some nights it's really flowing, and usually when I practice, I can feel that flow. If I don't practice, it's a little hard to get there. It's a little more rusty. If you play every night, it's a little bit of a different story. If you're on tour and you're playing every night for multiple nights for a couple of weeks, then you can feel the drums, not even picking up sticks. It's almost like you can just think the drums. But you know, after you get home from the tour, a couple of days later, when you totally lose your technique, got to get back to the drawing board and practice a little bit to get it back. So I find that the Rudimental Ritual is a really good warm-up and supplement to whatever else I want to practice.
You do have another question on that ritual.
Sure.
Doing Radabacues and counting the triplet inside of the samba foot pattern, I think you missed it. And how you opened the feel up of the bass drum as opposed to straight up and down. You kind of swung it a little bit. And that's a guy you know. His name is Ronnie from the Italian guys, Drum Shop, Sergio's Drum Shop.
Oh, yeah.
Ronnie.
Okay.
And he just
So-
wants to know how you count it.
Oh, I just think, I mean, I feel it in 2. You can count it in 4 or in 2, but basically with samba, you feel it in 2. But this is a special thing because it's a rudimental workout. So, you know, 1, 2, 1, 2. That's basically how you feel it. So if I'm playing Radabacues, yeah, the bass drum stays pretty much the same. It's not going to be exactly, if you program that in a drum computer, it's not going to be that. It's going to be a little looser. it too much. Just make sure that the downbeats are lining up. Now, when you play samba, that's a different story. You have to line up. You have to line up the 16ths in 2/4. Now, here's an exercise I give some students, and they have a lot of trouble playing it because of the pickup on the bass drum. It's just upbeat 16ths, the E's and the U's, unison on both hands, and samba on the bass drum and hi-hat. Try it flat-footed, nice and relaxed. When some students play it, it sounds like kind of like a blast beat. So you got to get the lined up with the bass drum. That's the main thing. I throw that in samba once in a while. Okay. So, yeah, that's a really good workout. Now, I think I would like to switch the topic to styles a little bit because I get asked a lot about this, particularly Latin styles. A lot of people like to play kind of hybrid, so-called Latin in a jazz context, and that's cool. You know, I've done that, and it sounds fine. You just have to make it work. But if you want to get into a Brazilian feel or a Cuban feel or another South American or Caribbean feel, you have to do a little investigation. You have to do a little bit of study, and you have to know the little details about the music. So let's just take samba for example. Some people try to explain the swing, you know, like they delay a certain note. But I don't believe in trying to teach that. I believe in listening to samba and then absorbing that feel and then letting it come out authentically, okay? So, because if I try to write it out and point an arrow this way, it's just going to sound funny. But part of the swing of samba, you know, having said that, part of the swing of samba is the physical motion of some of the instruments, okay? So I want to say that the heart and soul of samba is basically in two of the instruments, the surdo, which is the bass drum, looks like a big floor tom, played with a mallet, and the tambourine. The tambourine is a small frame drum about this big that's just played with a stick and sometimes twisted. So when you're playing samba, when you play this on the bass drum, that comes from the surdo, and the surdo plays a strong beat on 2. So 1 is kind of soft, but 2 is always strong. And there's always a pickup when you first start. So 1, 2, 1 and 2. So that would be a typical surdo marcação pattern. There's several different surdos, and they have kind of a counterpoint going on. But if you have one surdo playing, that would be it. So that's where this comes from. You can also play it, sometimes I play it with a dead stroke, in essence, burying the beater, and then come off the beater for 2. So 1. So essentially, you're on the first beat, you're stopping the vibration, and the second beat, you're creating it. So that's why I don't tell anybody that a dead stroke is wrong. It's just another sound, okay? Because you can play this. I wouldn't play that all the time, but it's a different sound than this. Okay, so if you do this, now you have 4 toms instead of 2. Okay, now I mentioned the tambourine. Now we don't have a tambourine here, but you can imitate the sound on the snare. And as a matter of fact, the cross-stick sound is very similar to the sound of the tambourine. So a typical tambourine pattern, and it's played with one stick, and sometimes the finger plays a ghost stroke as a counterpoint to it, or actually echoes it. Sounds something like this. Okay? Now if I combine that with the surdo pattern, okay, now if we modify that slightly, we get something like this. See how all the upbeats line up with the pickups? That's very important to get the groove feeling good. Now, quite often there's a shaker played. And on the hi-hats, what I do is I play a slight accent wherever I play the left hand. So. Okay, now you'll notice I was playing a 2-bar phrase. Sometimes a phrase can work the opposite direction. So you anticipate into the first measure and play the downbeat on the second measure. 2. Okay, so before I had mentioned a little bit about the swing being something to do with the physical instrument. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to attempt to demonstrate this to you on a small instrument. Do you have a small pad over there I can use? Maybe that Vic Firth pad right there? Can you just hand that to me for a second? I want to demonstrate the virada style tambourine technique. Perfect, thank you, Matt. Okay. So I'm going to play the other side of this. Okay, so this is about the size of a tambourine. Now the phrase is 1E, a 2E, a 1E, a 2E, a 1. And what happens after you play 1E, you're going to twist the instrument like that. And then you come back and play the last note. So 1E, 2E, 1E, 2E, 1. And what happens is, once you get that going, you get an accidental upstroke. Okay, so. Now it's starting to swing in a Brazilian style. Now how does that happen? That happens because we're not machines. We get lazy. We can't play it just doesn't work. So we start to play it's more relaxed. It's almost a triplet, but not quite. Okay, so once you internalize that groove and that feeling from listening to a lot of samba music, then you can apply it to the drum set. See, I'm not thinking, now I'm going to swing like this. I just think samba, and then it just naturally comes out that way. Okay? Now, if you're wondering about the technique on the right hand, as I mentioned before, I'm playing the accents of the left. So it's in essence, it's unison. Okay, so what it is basically throwing the stick in groupings of 2, and 3. So if you hear samba played like this, it doesn't really work because there's all downbeats. It sounds like quarter notes. So you have to be able to, you have to be able to turn the pattern around. That's where the 3s come in. Now this left-hand technique that I'm playing is kind of like what I was doing with the tambourine. So the hi-hat closes on the ands. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So there's a lot of possibilities for coordination that I still have to practice. So I'm going to switch gears and go to another style because I don't want to take too much time on one style. So we don't have that much time left. So I'm going to go from Brazil to Cuba and just explain briefly a couple of the rhythms that we play and how to get the feel. Now, one of the first rhythms that was played on the drum set and conceived on the drum set was songo. Now, it's since the early 70s when Changuito developed it in Los Van Van and many other drummers. It's kind of gone into a new era of timba and Latin jazz and loosened up quite a bit too. But one of the very first songo patterns was played by Blas Aegis with Los Van Van. He was the first drummer of Los Van Van. So he was playing on a block. I'll just play the bell instead of a block. And it sounded like this. And the congos were playing. So there was definitely a double time feeling under that. What Changuito did was develop that and play a lot of different rhythms. And you can see Changuito all over YouTube. Check him out. Jose Luis Quintana, Changuito. He's one of the greatest drummers alive. Equally amazing on percussion as well as drums and congas. I mean, this guy is like at the top. You probably heard of Giovanni Hidalgo. Giovanni was the first person to mention Changuito to me. He said, if Changuito were here, forget about it. Okay, so Changuito started to get into some grooves. Now, one thing about songo is that that's the groove that most people know when you talk about songo. Okay, if you go to so-and-so's groove book, you'll hear that version of songo. But the point I want to make is that if you listen to all that music that was being created then, they were experimenting and each tune was different. Like if you listen to early Los Van Van, if you listen to Iraquere with Paquito de Rivera and Arturo Sandoval, you'll see that each tune had a different rhythm, each tune had a different groove. And in the case of Los Van Van, most of those tunes were based on the bass line. The bass player was actually the leader of the band. So that groove is cool, but it may not work for some grooves. For some tunes. That's what I'm saying. So you always have to be adaptable to different bass lines, different tunes. one size does not necessarily fit all. So that's the point I want to make about Songo. So there's been times where I've experimented and I've just thrown in some David Garibaldi in a Songo groove. I'll show you. And that was, of course, the Oakland stroke, or as close as I can get to it. But that really fits in with Songo, or Latin funk. Okay? So really the point is, experiment, play around with it. Just make sure you're not necessarily playing against the clave. And it should work out just fine.
No questions at this point. But
Okay, I'm probably baffling them, right?
no. Everybody's just amazed. They're amazed.
Okay, cool.
We're going to have to close up in about 5 minutes.
Okay, cool.
Anyway, why don't you just tell them about your publications and your website?
Okay, could I just borrow your book? Thanks. Okay, I wanted to show you this book. This is World Jazz Drumming. This is my book with Hal Leonard, and in it you'll find a lot of different styles. You'll find a CD with a special guest, Paquito de Rivera, and yes. Okay, I just wanted to show the book. Okay, so here it is. Yes, there it is. World Jazz Drumming. It's got a CD and it's got some original music, and it's got a lot of different styles from South America and the Caribbean, and a little bit about swing, phrasing, and comping, and accents. So just very briefly, one of the exercises in here is a series of comping phrases for left hand while you're playing swing. And what I do is add accents to that. And the rule of thumb for what I did here is that if there's an accent alone with no eighth notes around it, I play an accent. If there's a note with no eighth notes around it, I play an accent. If there's a series of two notes together with a distance of an eighth note away, I accent the last one. So if you have three notes, do-ba-da, or 1, 2, ba-do-ba. Okay? So this is adding dynamics to the phrasing. I'm not talking about dynamics for a verse or a chorus. I'm talking about dynamics in your phrasing. If you add that, then all of a sudden your comping is 3D, three-dimensional. Okay? So that's one of the many little nuggets of wisdom that you'll find in this book. Okay. Now, also, I want to let you know that I have a lesson website. It's not like Matt's website because I haven't done any live lessons. But what I did was pre-record I'm up to about 135 lessons now. And you can go in there and you can check out some free lessons. There are a few that are free. I think the Rudimental Ritual is free. You can check that out. There's a transcription somewhere. And of course, that's a subscription website, so check it out. That's markwalkerlessons.com. And I also have an online course for Berklee College of Music, Berklee Online, and that's called Afro-Cuban Drums. And what I do is explain a lot of different Afro-Cuban rhythms, Songo, 6/8, danzón, cha-cha-cha, mambo, rumba, a lot of different rhythms and solo concepts and everything. And that's a course that you can get credit for, or you can take it for non-credit. And it's a very challenging course. A lot of people start it and they get a little freaked out, but I just keep encouraging them and they get through it and they become stronger players, and they really like it. So that's probably starting up in a few weeks. So check out berkleeonline.com. So thanks for everything. And any final questions?
Take us out with a solo.
Okay, might as well. thank you.
Okay, well, everybody say thank you.
All right.
All right, everybody. Thank you for stopping by. And online students, the PDFs will be up in a little while for tomorrow's lesson. I will be uploading this video to YouTube. So those who had problems or those who couldn't make the lesson today will have it. So guys, have a good day. The rest of the night, go practice a lot.
I'll practice too.